Arts Weekly, celebrating regional expression, performance, and creativity, is brought to you in part by the Edward D. and Ione Auer Foundation, the Ian and Mimi Rowland Foundation, the family of Dr. Christopher and Kirsten LaSalle, and the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This is Arts Weekly. Arts Weekly is produced in cooperation with the College of Visual and Performing Arts at IPFW, offering degrees in fine arts, music, theater, and visual communication and design.
Thank you for tuning in to Arts Weekly. I'm Melinda Haines of the IPFW College of Visual and Performing Arts. In the second half of the show, we'll talk with Barbara Resch and Dan Tembris of the IPFW Department of Music about their upcoming fall schedule. But first, we'll meet Michelle Nelson, who is here to tell us about her new exhibit, Typographic Discourse, at the IPFW Visual Arts Gallery. Michelle, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you know, I am a big type nerd, so this is exciting for me to talk about typography and fonts, but I'm guessing not everybody out there is a type nerd, so I'm wondering if we can start by you defining what typography is.
Well, I mean, we're walking around and interacting with it every day, every time we pass a sign, every time we pass a poster, and typography can mean several different things. Typography can just simply be formal grid and structure with information that we're trying to convey as designers. It could be more expressive, or it could be font design, and that's what I've done is an exhibit on font design.
So the typography, the font design part that you've created, this new font, the new font is going to be a part of this
Absolutely.
Exhibit. The typography, you know, it really is important to a lot of things, but people don't really know why it's important. It's almost kind of underappreciated.
It is.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I actually make this point in class. Typography is a little like the 2x4s that we see that are holding up our houses that we don't see, but are giving us all that information that we're interacting with. And so I make that connection to make sure that students understand what it is that typography really means in the design process.
So it's really the structure that's holding everything of the design process together.
Absolutely.
Now, in class, you are an associate professor of graphic and interactive design at Youngstown State.
I am, and I'm also a product of 2 Indiana University campuses. I did my undergrad at Haines School of Art, which is part of IUPUI, in Indianapolis, and then I also did my graduate work at Indiana University Bloomington. So happy, and I'm a Hoosier, so happy to be home.
Well, we're glad to have a Buckeye visiting her home state for this. The typography, though, isn't something that you normally see in a gallery, like we're about to see in your exhibit. Why isn't it? I mean, it's such a basic foundation.
Well, when you think about it, the entire world is typography's gallery. As I said, we're walking past it every day. We're interacting with it. We're reading it. We're absorbing it wherever we go. It's on TV. It's on posters. It's on billboards. It's not something that we think about. We don't think about those letter forms that communicate so much. And typography's really changed in the last couple of decades from something that was simply about reading left to right to something that was more about creating emotion through font and creating mood and tone. So that's a really exciting part of being, you know, a designer in the last 2 decades, was being part of creating so much diversity in something that we're taking for granted.
Well, and I think it's easy for people to take it to granted, especially younger people today who don't really understand where those fonts really came from. They don't understand about the process of setting type on a letterpress, or of how those letters actually come together. They just type on a keyboard and they appear.
Absolutely right. And sometimes they have the opposite reaction. They are in such a media-saturated culture, and they realize that fonts are designed for different components of our society, and so they actually notice nuances maybe sometimes quicker than others.
The exhibit that you have that's opening shortly, Typographic Discourse, tell me about the display. What is going to be involved? I know your font is going to be there, but what else are we going to see?
So there's a font that I've created, Modern Poise, that's the main event really.
Mm-hmm.
I've designed that font specifically to be showcased in the exhibit, and it's part of my sabbatical.
Yeah, we've got a little example of the first couple letters up there right now.
And I love the B.
Yeah, oh, I love them all. I want to see the whole thing.
Then I have 5 other fonts that are on type specimen sheets that I've created, that I've done throughout the last 18 years. And looking back, I've learned so much. It was kind of nice putting this together, because I see some of those first fonts and think, oh gosh, I don't love them anymore, and you know, I'm so happy with the way Modern Poise has come out.
Well, that's, you know, the artist in you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, you
Absolutely.
start out at one level and then you move up, but that's the graphic design part too. It's got a reason for being. It isn't just, you know, a letter A on its own.
If you're satisfied, then you should quit.
Yeah.
Because artists and designers should never be satisfied.
I want people to understand that you created this font, and we've got some videos that we can pull up. If we can kind of start with that letter E one, and maybe talk us through this process. What are you doing here as you're creating this letter?
So this is a sketch of me putting together actually an O, and then it transforms into an E. Letter forms have to relate. They have to have strong connections. And this has been sped up. I actually don't draw this quickly. But it's intended to kind of show the hand. I think so often people think that these fonts just naturally occur on a computer, but an authentic font needs to start by hand. I think if it's not done by your hand off the computer, and you're starting with an already existing font, you're building on someone else's creativity.
Right. You're not starting over.
Absolutely.
So is there a letter of the alphabet that you tend to start with when you design a font?
There is actually O.
Oh, okay.
Because there are so many letter forms.
As you can see right there, you started with the O, and now magically
it's transformed.
Yeah.
The O is a basic form that we can find in an A and a B, the lower part of a B and a D, and obviously the E's been transformed, and C. So it's one of those components that I start with early, and then I start thinking about ascenders and descenders, which are those things that
go up or hang down.
Absolutely.
Do you start with the lowercase letters first?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I love them a little bit more. I find that, and everyone feels differently when they start doing this. They'll start with uppercase or lowercase, but I love the lowercase.
Yeah.
I think they have such little personalities.
Well, was there an uppercase B clip too that we
there
had?
was.
I don't know
Absolutely.
if you can pull up that uppercase B just to kind of see the difference, you know, and to see the little, you know, I guess there really are serifs, you know, on the edges of this. You know, tell me a little bit about Modern Poise and what you wanted to do with this font.
Well, I actually wanted to build a lot into Modern Poise that you don't expect. 3 main categories of fonts are serif, sans serif, and script, and I wanted parts of those to show up in this font. I wanted it to be a little bit fresh, but I wanted it to reference some history. I wanted it to be precise and flowing at the same time. So those are a lot of things
You're
to
asking
fit in.
a lot.
I am. Well, you know, I have to challenge myself.
Right.
And I'm absolutely thrilled with the way it's come out. And there are going to be, this is going to be a font family, so I'm going to do a full serif font for this. I'm going to do a full sans serif font for this, and a full script, and possibly a dingbat.
Well, that would be a very complete family then. You know, we're watching this, you know, this creation sped up, of course, that you did, but it goes from this hand-drawn stage and it has to somehow get to this electronic format that we're all used to using. What happens from this stage, you know, where we see you drawing this? How does it end up something we type on our keyboard and it shows up in our design?
Well, after I've hand-drawn every character in the entire family, I'll scan those in and I'll illustrate those again digitally in Adobe Illustrator, which is actually a significant, probably half my time is hand sketching and then half my time is in Illustrator, and each letter form has to be, you know, reevaluated for thins and thicks to make sure that all of those subtle characteristics that make it look like a font that relates from letter to letter are handled. Once I've done that, I take it into a program like Font Lab, or there's another one called Fontographer, and it's the nitpicky details that make a font a well-done font. There's something called kerning, which is the space between each letter form, and so I have to go through A, B, A, C, A, D, every letter,
Every
uppercase, lowercase,
yeah.
every combination, and that makes a font flow when somebody types it out, and that program ultimately is the generator of that final font.
I see. So when you were hand drawing, if something maybe was not quite as precise as you want it to be, then when you get it into that software, you can make sure that the letters are the exact same width between letters and that sort of thing.
Lots of grid structure happening in that Illustrator program, and it has a hand in there. It changes the way some of the curves play out just because I see it so immediately.
Right.
Those subtleties happen on screen that don't as quickly happen by hand.
Well, that's absolutely beautiful font, and
Thank
I'm
you.
hoping that I can get to use that someday in something. Now, tell me again, when and where is the exhibit? It opens pretty soon.
The exhibit is in the Visual Arts Building on IPFW's campus, and it is open from October 7th to November 17th.
Great. Well, I am looking forward to seeing that. Michelle, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
While we get ready for our next guests, Barbara Resch and Dan Tembris, please take a minute to view our performance calendar of what's coming up in our area. You also can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We'll be right back to hear more about the IPFW Department of Music's fall concert schedule.